Are classic books really that good? I don't know. I'm running out of ideas for intros. We're going to do a classic book tier list. I've read a lot of these. A lot of these I read a long time ago, so I may have to pause and Google the plot synopsis, but we're going to kind of go off a feel of what I remember. Those that I haven't read are just going to automatically go in D. Doesn't mean they're terrible, just means I haven't gotten around to them yet. We're starting off. Faulkner's Absalom. I honestly like this one a lot more than a lot of his other work, to be honest with you. What's the other one? Sound and the Fury that I've read. I'm not a huge fan of that one. I'm sure we'll get to that one at some point. Absalom feels a little bit more coherent. I think it uses more of his narrative style a little bit better. The fractured narrative, the telling through a bunch of different perspectives, Rashomon-esque, although this maybe was before Rashomon. I don't know the timeline. Anyway, solid B. I think if you're looking for something kind of Southern Gothic, kind of, depressing, but in a good way, because it's like the downfall of the South, and a lot of those people were terrible. So, it is what it is. Speaking of terrible people, Lolita, which is another in a long line of classic books that kind of make you feel terrible. Most of the classics kind of have a negative bent to them. The subject matter is what makes it so negative, because you are placed inside the mind of a terrible human being. If you've read the book, but I think that the mark of a good book is that it causes you to think about these things in a way that you never would as a normal human being. These texts, a lot of them ask uncomfortable questions, and I think that's why they're classics, not just because of the writing, because in honesty, the writing is okay. It's not fantastic, in my opinion. I haven't read it in a long time. I think this was a college read for me. So the writing was just okay, but the questions that it asks of the reader, of the writer, of society at large are important enough and interesting enough that I think it's a B for me, maybe a C. But I'm trying not to allow the visceral feelings of disgust that you get from reading this book to kind of color the way that I would rate this book. If we're rating just on subject matter, it's a D, but we're not. We're rating on, whatever classicness is, or classicality. I don't know. Catcher in the Rye. We're going to get a lot of B's here, I think. I enjoyed this book a lot when I was younger. I think because I was a young man, and it kind of speaks to young men in a way that I think it may not speak to other people. So as I've grown and kind of reflected on it, maybe I need to reread it, because again, this is another college read for me, which has been, about 12 years. So no, I'm not that old, right? Anyway, I'm having an existential crisis as I make this video. It spoke to me then. It may still speak to me now, but it doesn't stick in my mind as something that really stands the test of time for me personally. So it's another B. Let's see if we can get past that. We can. Moby Dick. Not a huge fan of this. Obviously, the allegory and the symbolism in this book work, but the prose is just so damn boring that I could not get into it. I honestly, I don't know if I should even rate this, because I don't think I finished it, because I just couldn't get around just how bored I was throughout the whole thing. So I'm going to put it in C. Maybe it goes down to D as we go down the list here. 1984. This is a clear S tier for me. I'm a huge fan of 1984. Again, something that I read in my formative years that kind of colored the way that I look at the world, that remains the way that I look at the world. I mean, it's so cliche now to talk about 1984. Every other day, it's like we're living in a dystopia. Every other day, someone is spouting some BS on Twitter about how we're living in 1984. But the core of this book remains incredibly important, and people need to read it, and read it a lot. It's so good in that it's a narrative that entices you into actually reading it and engaging in it. And then before you even know it, you're so caught up in the narrative that you don't realize that you're also asking yourself questions about the society that you live in. At least that was my experience. So that's a clear S tier for me. Loved it. Pride and Prejudice. I think that's Pride and Prejudice. I can't really read these. I didn't make this list. I just got this off online. I'm pretty sure that's Pride and Prejudice. That's a solid A tier for me. This is the book that taught me how to feel, for lack of a better way to put it. As an angsty 16-year-old, I was like, Jane Austen, garbage. Don't, I'm a man. I'm a man's man. I don't like Pride and Prejudice. Boo. And then I read it. And you realize that these are, deeply human emotions that are told so well through different perspectives. It broadens your mind. It helped me kind of break out of some of my immaturity. I was still a 16-year-old dude. So Did it really break me out of the immaturity? Probably not, but I wanted to feel like it did. And as I look back with rose-colored glasses, I feel that it did. It's on my list for this year to reread. I'm really excited about it. I'm going to listen to it, which should be a different perspective because I read it, in physical text the last time. So I'm excited to see the new things that I kind of pick up and how I relate to it. Next up, Beloved. I have not read this one, so we're moving on. Don Quixote is a B for me. We read Don Quixote in Spanish class in high school. We read portions of it in Spanish, obviously trying to learn more Spanish. But I've also read it in English where I could, fully understand and grasp what was being said. And so I'm trying to think about it in English rather than in Spanish in a way that I understood it rather than not. I enjoy this book. Again, it's one of those that is a little long, it's a little meandering, but that's kind of the narrative. Like, it's about a quest. It's a quest story. It's a quest story about someone who's maybe pathologically insane and who is trying to grasp at grandeur that's not really there. And there's a really interesting tale in this about kind of creating your own demons, obviously fighting, slashing at windmills. That's a cliche because of this book. Like, we create these giants and these demons that we have to fight, and we only have ourselves to blame when we fail in doing that. So I think, there's value in this. There's value in all these. These are classics for a reason. Like, stop dissing the classics, man. They have something to tell us as humans. And I think that this book has something to tell you as long as you read it in your native tongue, which I did and liked it a little bit more. I didn't love it. It's not on the same level as Pride and Prejudice or 1984 for me, but still very good. What's this one? Is this The Sound and the Fury? Okay. Sound and the Fury, another Faulkner. This one has a very difficult start because it is told through the perspective of someone dealing with mental disability. And because of that, it is so incredibly confusing to try and get your footing with this book at all. Like, the first 60 pages, I think, is told through this perspective. And it's just so difficult to grab onto anything, which I think sets the rest of the book up to kind of fail. Like, Faulkner's obviously a genius, and these are texts that are way above me or my criticism. But for me personally, Absol and Absalom is a little bit easier to kind of gain entry to. So, if you're looking to read Faulkner, I would start with that one and then maybe try Sound and the Fury after. People love Sound and the Fury. I think that it's decent to good, but that first perspective chapter just absolutely kills me. What's this? I can't even read. Oh, David Copperfield. Have not read David Copperfield. Haven't read a lot of Dickens. Any Dickens? I think I've read Christmas, the Muppets Christmas Carol. Okay. The Iliad. This is an S. If you watch me for a little bit, you know that I have great respect for antiquity and, ancient Rome, ancient Greece, the stories told by those people. The stories and the texts that came out of that time period, I think, are some of the, I see the Odyssey right here. That's going to go right there. These aren't combination pieces, but you can read them kind of in combination. They're just fantastic. And I think because of the way that they're written, hexacic diameter or whatever it is, I looked it up recently for a video that I made. The poetic nature of how they're written is very, very hard to overcome, but it's very worth it. And we live in a world now where there's so many different ways to approach this text that can kind of hold your hand through it. And you will get so much more out of this by doing that. So I would encourage you to, if you read these and, I think we first read the Odyssey in 10th grade and was just like, what the heck is this, man? This is so stupid. Go back to it, and give it another shot, because I think it's really, really good. Okay. Virginia Woolf. I can't read the title. Oh, To the Lighthouse. Haven't read any Virginia Woolf. Haven't read any Proust. Brothers Karamazov. Dostoevsky. Probably one of my top 5, maybe top 3 writers of all time. Sorry, I'm sweating to death. That's why I keep grabbing my towel. If you'll excuse me for a moment, probably one of my top 5, maybe top 3 authors of all time. And this is, I think, his best. It's also on my list for a reread this year because I want to approach it again as a newer person. As accessible as Russian literature can get, I think. So, give it a shot. It's hard to describe. It's hard for me to talk about these things that have had such a profound impact on me, but may not have a profound impact on you. But this is my list, so there you go. The Stranger. I actually just finished this. I'm gonna give this a B. It's a novella, so it's very easy to read if you're just getting into classics. I think it's a great entry point because it is so short, and you won't feel like you have to lose a whole month of your life reading it like some of these books. But I think it's good. I think it has a lot of power to it. I think the discussions on existentialism, the discussions on do our choices matter? Does anything matter? Is this world random? How should we approach the random absurdity of the world? That it can be as deep as you want it to be, or it can just be a story about a guy who gets hot on the beach and kills somebody. Sorry, spoilers. So, it's one of those, but I think it's worth reading and worth engaging with. Next up is To Kill a Mockingbird. I think this is definitely an A. This is one of those that, again, kind of like 1984, it's been beaten to death so much that the tendency for a lot of critical thinkers or critics in general is just to say, okay, we've done it to death. We don't need to talk about it anymore. But I still think it deserves its place for the time period, for when it was written, for how it was written, for how it was approached, for how it's taught, for the question of whether or not we should still teach it. I think it's fantastic. I think we obviously should still teach it because it has such a good thing to say, and it says it very well, like a lot of these books do. I feel like I'm repeating myself a lot, but there you go. Huck Finn was never really my favorite. It's going to be a C for me. I have plans to read James, which is the telling of Huck Finn through the eyes of Jim, who goes on the journey with Huck Finn. So I'm excited to read that. I think that would be a really interesting tale. But Huck Finn in general, Mark Twain is great, but Mark Twain is that kind of humor that doesn't really resonate with me too much, humorous, satirist, whatever. It has to be like extremely good for me to really participate in it. War and Peace, I have not read. It is on the list. Catch-22, I don't know, A or B. I like this book a lot. Again, it's one of those that I read when I was younger. In high school, I think we had to read it. Again, due for a reread. I'm going to keep it an A. I really think that it was one of those books in high school that I actually liked reading. And usually when that happens, that means that it's going to carry some weight with it as we go. So we're going to go, Catch-22. It's a thing. It's a phrase. Ernest Hemingway, Sun Also Rises, might be my favorite book of all time. I don't know. Is it? I guess it's definitely S tier for me. Hemingway is one of my favorites. Again, with Dostoevsky, top 5 for sure. So I think I'm making this list kind of just to say engage with some of these books that, like, some of these books need to be engaged with. Like, there are people, I know people don't read anyway. So just to read whatever, like read Court of Thorns and Roses or whatever, that's fine. Go for it. But these books have so much to say about just human nature, and you learn so much from these books that I really hope that some of these, pique your interest. Haven't read Invisible Man. I have not read Madame Bovary. Have read Jane Eyre. Wasn't a huge fan of Jane Eyre. Feel like Charlotte Bronte is kind of poor man's Jane Austen. But, I ride for my girl Jane Austen. But I don't really ride so much for the Bronte sisters in general. All right, we're going to start rolling through these because this list is huge. I didn't really realize how long this was. 100 Years of Solitude. Haven't read it. It's on the list. It's going to be read. Karenina. Haven't read it. Going to read it. It's on the list. Great Gatsby. It's going to be A, maybe. I was thinking S. I don't know. Again, this is one of those, people either love this book or hate this book. And I've heard great arguments on both sides of love and hate. For me, I hated it when we read it in high school. I loved it when I read it again. I kind of liked it the third time that I read it. It's just, it depends on how I'm approaching it. It depends on where my mental state is. All these things depend. But I really, I think it's an A, solid for me. Ulysses, have not read. Virginia Woolf, again, I haven't really engaged in a lot of Virginia Woolf. This might mean that I need to go ahead and do that. I'm going to scroll out again so we can see stuff. Thank you very much. I can't even tell what book this is. Oh, this is The Trial. This is Kafka. I think Kafka is interesting for me. This is going to be an A, but a begrudging A. I like this book, and I think that this book, for me, I like this more than Metamorphosis. Maybe because it's a little bit more coherent. I don't know. Metamorphosis is great. The Trial is great. Kafka, brilliant. You should read it. Moving on. I'm sweating to death. Steinbeck, fantastic. Grapes of Wrath. I like East of Eden more. But Grapes of Wrath, I think, has more of a cultural impact. So because of that, that's why it's probably on this list over whatever, over East of Eden. But it's an A for me. I don't know what there is to say about this that there hasn't already been said. Like, it's just really, really, really good. Go ahead and read it. Great Expectations. Haven't read it. My man Dickens. The Divine Comedy. This is interesting. When I first engaged, oh man, how many times have I said when I first? When I read this book as a younger person, I really, really liked it because I was dealing with my own struggles with religion. I was dealing with my own struggles with, the afterlife or punishment or hell. And I think I read Inferno first and then moved my way up, Purgatory and then Paradise. And it didn't really solve any of those questions or answer any of those questions that I had, but I had fun reading it. So, I'll give it a B. That's that's totally fine. I think this is Little Women. Sorry. I feel like I, as a 30-year-old man, cannot put Little Women in C without, some uproar in the comments, but nobody's watching these anyway. So I'm going to do what I want to do. I didn't like this book. It's fine. Again, it's not for me. I think that there are people that really gain some incredible insight into themselves, into humanity, into what it means to be a woman. I'm not a woman. I'm a father of a daughter and I'm a husband to a wife. And so I can kind of put myself in those spaces. But for me personally, it's a C. I'm sorry. Don't be mad. Call of the Wild, again, a C. Jack London, man. I didn't like this book at all. Maybe it's a D. It's one that I have read that I'm putting in D. Lady Chatterley's Lover, have not read. What's this one? Oh my God. Can anybody see? I can't even tell what that cover is. So we're going to go ahead and put it in D. Old Man in the Sea. I actually just did I do a review of this? No, I just read it and talked about it a little bit in a previous video of mine. A is probably too high, to be honest with you. I'm going to have to go B. I mean, I love Hemingway so much and just my love of Hemingway was trying to pull it up a little bit more, but it's fine. Again, it's one of those where it's like, you can read so much symbolism into this. You can just go to town on almost every page about the symbolic nature of this text. And then you can see that Hemingway was like, no, man, it's about a fish and a man trying to catch a fish. And you're like, okay, but does the author truly die? Is the death of an author a real thing? It kind of, I think if you read symbolism into a lot of stuff that you read, I think you'll probably get a little bit more out of The Old Man in the Sea than I did. All Quiet on the Western Front is an A. But to be honest with you, I like the movie better, the newer version. But again, such an interesting and impactful and powerful tale of warfare and what it means to engage in warfare from the front lines, from the perspective of the people that actually are in it and not the perspective of the people that are making the decisions. So I just, what's this one? Can't even see. Oh, Murakami. This is one Murakami that I haven't read, The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle. I've read a lot of Murakami, but I haven't read that one. Excited to read it. That one is going on the list. Hamlet's got to be A. It's the one Shakespeare that I actually like. I don't love a lot of Shakespeare. Maybe that is because of high school, just immaturity, reading it. But if I'm going to sit here and say, the Iliad and the Odyssey are hard to read, but you can engage with them in a little bit of a better way, then maybe I should take my own advice, because there's 1,000 different, aids to help you read Shakespeare today and get something out of it. So, I'll put Hamlet there just so that I don't get crucified, but I'm not a huge fan. Another Faulkner. Whoever made this list really likes Faulkner. As I Lay Dying is better than Sound and the Fury for me. I mean, I guess I really like Faulkner. I've read pretty much everything he's written. It's good. Again, Absalom, I think is better. I think that's his peak. That's a marriage of writing style and narrative and symbolism and everything. I think that it comes together so much better in that one. It's okay in As I Lay Dying, not fantastic. I think this is Lord of the Rings. Boom, bam, boom. Don't even have to talk about it. This is all 3 books. I mean, it's fantasy. It is. Do you like fantasy novels? Well, you have these books to thank for it. So there you go. It's going in S. Alice in Wonderland. Yeah, that's a B. Again, these books, a lot of them have had so many different adaptations or different viewpoints or different, kind of like buddy texts, and people are always trying to, you got Pride and Prejudice and zombies, right? They have so much gravity that there's so much extra baggage around them. And so the baggage of thinking about Johnny Depp as the Mad Hatter makes you want to put Alice's Adventures in Wonderland in like a F tier. But the text itself is not. It's a B. So I have to, remind myself. Lord of the Flies, an A for me. Again, I think this is probably my maleness kind of going through. I think this is, when I read this, I was a young man, and you kind of see the dangers of being a young man, in a group of young men, and what it can do to you when you do not have civilizing outside forces. I think that this is a pretty harrowing tale of kind of what we see in a lot of spaces that are pretty male dominated and without a lot of societal sharpening of the rough edges, if you want to put it that way. So I really like Lord of the Flies. Brave New World. I don't really remember this book at all. I know I've read it, but I don't really remember it. And as such, I cannot comment on it. Crime and Punishment, fantastic. I mean, another one of those that I absolutely hated when I first read it, because I was just like, why? What is the matter with it? I don't care. And then I reread it with more of an open mind, I guess, more time on my hands. I returned to loving reading, and just like, it's fantastic. It's the human condition laid bare in a way that no self-help book, no psychology textbook, like it's a narrative, but it is so purely human. And I really enjoy that. Vonnegut, Slaughterhouse-Five, fantastic. I'm surprised they don't have Animal Farm on here. I really like Slaughterhouse-Five. I don't know what else. I don't know if it's an S though. Now that I think about it, I think I like Catch-22 more. Okay, we'll leave it. Hey, Frankenstein is an S for sure. Mary Shelley, you are incredible. You want to talk about humanity and humanity's relationship with technology and humanity's relationship with death. This is it, man. This is just fantastic. And then finally, On the Road, Jack Kerouac. Good. I think it's really good if you're looking for direction, maybe. Is that what I want to say? If you're in a place where you really don't kind of know what you're doing. If you're in, mid-20s, you're kind of just aimless. You're trying to figure it out. This is one of those where you'll learn something maybe about yourself. I don't know. Maybe I'm just personifying myself to the audience, but this is my slapdash crazy list. Do we want to change anything here? I don't think so. I don't know. Is this even coherent? I feel like I've sweated. I've sweated through my entire shirt. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you got something out of this. I guess the main message is go read the classics, man. A lot of these books are fantastic. A lot of these books will be better for you than they were for me. All of these books mean something and are important, and we should be reading them over and over again. And I hope that you will go and read them. And if you have read them, if you think that I've messed up this list, please let me know in the comments. I have to stop recording now or I will melt. Thank you so much for watching. More soon. Subscribe, all that jazz. Thank you. Goodbye.